Thank you for joining us this evening. Welcome to the Board of Education meeting. I would ask you at this time to please stand and join us with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, good evening and welcome. We're glad to see all of you here this evening. We'll move on with the agenda to the Superintendent's Report. Dr. Henson.
Thank you, Mrs. Zeal. I have a number of items for you this evening. I will start out by saying it is nice to have electricity back. We were without electricity for a period of time today, and so it's always great to have electricity back, but it certainly made it much quieter. So no telephones, no email, and so but we're up and running again. So several things for you this evening. Julia Poe, she's a senior at Shawnee Mission East, was named the National High School Journalist of the Year. The Pacemaker Award, you can apply for her. The Pacemaker Award was awarded to Shawnee Mission North's Indian Yearbook, Shawnee Mission East Yearbook as well. Multiple individual and publication honors, including 8 Best of Show awards, were given to Shawnee Mission students. So a great honor for our journalism students and programs, and certainly Julia Poe, a senior at East, the National High School Journalist of the Year. So I'm thinking she has a job with the PV Post. Did you get that, Jay? Shawnee Mission Northwest students, as you can see, were named champions in the State Economics Challenge. Indian Wood students were named state champions in the Personal Finance Challenge. Shawnee Mission Animation Signature Program students earned multiple awards at the Imagine Media Festival. Logan Jenkins took first place in 2 categories, and Shawnee Mission students swept away the 3D Organic category at the event. Project Lead the Way engineering students, James Ownman and Emily, I'm going to probably butcher this, so Emily, you have to forgive me, but it's Niederbrimmer, received a top 10 honor, and Raz Lobach and Matt Eli won second place in the Inventors Design Viability Competition at the Project Lead the Way Senior Showcase. Also, the Research and Development Forum was held this past weekend. We call it affectionately the R&D Forum. Held this past weekend and celebrated the excellent work in science, technology, art, career, and technical education in other areas. More than 150 awards were presented, including the Rainier Award, honoring students whose work demonstrated outstanding effort and achievement. This year's Rainier Award winners included Alexis Allen, Shawnee Mission West, her teacher is Brenda Bott, Tyler Kreutzer, Shawnee Mission Northwest, teacher is Mark Schrimmer, and Studi Dalal, Indian Hills, teacher is Brenda Bott. Studi has been working on her research. Now notice this, her teacher is at West, she's a middle school student. And so Studi's been working on her research with Mrs. Bott in the biotechnology lab at Shawnee Mission West, and that name should be familiar. She has older siblings. Also, and we're going to make this recognition tonight, so Mrs. Zila, if you could join us in front of the platform, I'm going to ask Representative and Dr. Barbara Boulier, and also one of our going to be high-flying teachers, and Representative Melissa Rooker is here as well. So Vanessa Hannon will join us tonight. And so Indian Woods Middle School science teacher, Vanessa Hannon, has been selected to attend Space Camp in Alabama this summer. So Representative Boyer secured Hannah's spot at the camp, and Ray and Susie Maculas are providing financial support for the trip through the Shawnee Mission Education Foundation. And so from my left, you have Representative Melissa Rooker, Representative Barbara Boyer, Vanessa Hannon, and Board President Deb Zila. We'll take a couple of pictures.
Have fun in space camp. That's right.
Dr. Southwick, if you would give us an update on construction this evening, please.
We have a picture.
We have a picture. It's not construction, but you have to have that to have construction.
Here we go. A little bit brief, and this follows up with our report last month. I apologize, I'm about a month into a cold, but my wife made me go to a minute clinic this weekend, so I'm getting my voice back. So some people have enjoyed that. We talked about our safety and security projects, talked about the permitting process. We're happy to say that those are almost complete, and we should be ready and scheduled to move forward with our safety and security and technology projects that we have this summer. We continue to work with all the municipalities where we have construction projects, and are having great luck in terms of them working with us moving forward with those. In addition to that, one of the biggest projects that we're involved in right now is, as you know, Crestview students will move out into Arrowhead for next year, and the Briarwood parents and staff and children will move to Broadmoor. That doesn't come without work, and so we have been, over the last month or so, Bob Robinson has orchestrated moving all the programs and services out of those buildings and preparing them for some construction work so that we can welcome students into those buildings in the fall. So that's been great work for Bob and his crew, and working with architects to make sure that we've got those schools ready to go for students. We are currently in design meetings with our architects, and as you know, we have 4 elementary schools that we're working on. Trailwood will be a rebuild on site while the school's in function. Briarwood will be raised, Crestview will be raised. And at this point in time, we still do not have a location for Benninghoven. As you remember, our fallback procedure is to build that building on site if we can't find a proper place for that. So we're in the design process of those right now. Just to recap with the board and also the audience, I'm sure there's some concern tonight with respect to that. We work with our design firms to first identify our academic programs. What will it meet the academic needs of our students moving forward? And again, we're designing a building that's going to last the next 50 to 60 years as a minimum, so it's extremely important. We're looking at safety and security issues, all the technology issues, and then working with the municipalities around the traffic flow as we get students to that building. So all of those things, we've looked at options, and over the next several weeks, we will be meeting with groups, individual groups, also the PTAs and the faculties and the principals to talk to them about design options we have. At this point in time, and I know there's been some concern, and we've been a little bit reluctant to lay information out until we have an opportunity to meet with those groups and explain what those design options are. But I will tell the board and also the audience tonight that no final decision has been made about what those plans will look like, and we value everybody's input as we move forward. As you can imagine, again, the task of having 4 elementary schools out of the ground by December, I keep going back to that, we have our work cut out for us, but we'll continue to work to make that happen. Our 18 to 21 program that serves our students with special needs that have reached graduation age but continue to have educational programming. We work with Dr. Gilhouse at South and have identified some space that can be their home forever. Right now they operate in Broadmoor, and they happen to be in a space that we have to work to do some division and some preparation for the students coming from Briarwood. So they'll stay in that program till the end of the year. But tonight we've worked with J.E. Dunn on our CMR process to give us a bid to renovate that project this summer. Again, that's a very, very fast-paced project, and that will be on the agenda tonight for your approval. The last piece is our turf projects that we have, and those are also, I believe, on the agenda for tonight. And we have turf projects at Shawnee Mission East and Shawnee Mission North that we received bids. We're happy to say we're under what we budgeted, and that work will also be done this summer. So very busy time. We are going to work as fast as we can to spend this money to deliver the end product to students and staff and communities. Do I have any questions? That's my report.
Thank you.
Just one. I think you have a photograph of demolition. I didn't hear our update on the
Center for Academic Achievement.
Yep.
Yes, we're involved in demolition with that project. If you have driven by 71st and between 71st and Antioch, just off Antioch, the old Antioch Middle School now is in rubble. It's my understanding the smokestack's supposed to come down here in the next day or so. I asked the contractor, are you nervous about that? And they said no, they just wanted to wait till the end to bring it down. So we hope to have all the demolition taken care of. We're working right now with the architects on the site development projects and then also the bidding for that project, and we hope to have that project out of the ground this summer.
Good.
couple of other items in relation to construction and working with our different cities and PTA groups as well in relation to landscaping. It's become very apparent we do not have a comprehensive landscaping plan and approach in the school district. We do not have a comprehensive approach to capture rainwater runoff. How do we use that for sustainability purposes for landscaping projects as well? We've had conversations about living walls and other initiatives, and so really looking at filling a position that's going to deal with everything in relation to recycling and composting and a comprehensive landscaping effort. How do we really teach our students and be great partners in our community as well in relation to capturing rainwater? And so instead of putting in sprinkler systems, the rainwater that we have, instead of putting that into stormwater runoff, how do we recapture that and really use that effectively? And so these sustainability and green efforts. And so that's something we're going to be focusing on in relation to our resources. And so stay tuned. You're going to hear more information in relation to that issue. Also tonight, as you're aware, we have on action item on the agenda number 18, land acquisition. And so that item tonight, as you're keenly aware, and so I'll call it futuristic. So it is across the street from our current softball complex there on Mauer. It is not for the relocation of an elementary school. It is for the future. And so you've been great to work with us on trying to envision what the western part of the school district will look like. And as you know, they've started to sell property there by the square foot. And so tonight we have the acquisition of approximately 40 acres, which is across the street on Mauer from our softball complex. There are not immediate plans. It is not for the relocation of a school, but it certainly gives us options in the future so that we can make those accommodations, those changes when that needs to happen. Also, tonight, just briefly for you, as we talk about some things, pupil-teacher ratio, which we're going to talk about a little bit in relation to fees as well. So we've announced caveat. So if the legislature funds the block grant bill, and if the court doesn't stop the block grant bill and put us in a different position, that we are reducing our pupil-teacher ratio. We're going from 30 to 27, and I know this is old news for you, but we have a number of classrooms that we're watching that are on that bubble. It will require the employment of additional teachers to reduce class size. Also, with that caveat, and again, we'll talk about it on fees, eliminating all kindergarten fees. So we've been working with the principals on trying to project what does that really mean for kindergarten enrollment? How many additional students will go full day instead of half day if their parents don't have to pay the fee? So we're working carefully in relation to buildings that we don't have any capacity. So think about that, where we have elementary school buildings where we don't have capacity to add additional classrooms. But then trying to gauge as well, so reducing from 30 to 27, and again, enrollment, it changes over the next several months. How many additional teachers will we hire, and do we have classrooms in some of our buildings for that to occur? Dr. Southwick mentioned Benninghoven. As you know, we've been looking and really asking the question, do we rebuild Benninghoven on the same site or a different site? We have not secured additional site. And as you know, the property acquisition tonight is not for Benninghoven in any way, shape, or form. That will not occur. So, but as we look at the buildings that are at capacity, as we look at a year from now, when we're talking about Shawnee, and as you know, we have an edict from the city of Shawnee that we have to eliminate mobiles in the school district that are in the city of Shawnee. We have to make a boundary change from Neiman to Shawnee in a year, but we're looking at a comprehensive fashion also at other elementary schools. So looking at the development in the Lenexa City Center area and the impact on enrollment at Sunflower and other schools. So as of right now, I am not making any recommendations to you for this coming school year for boundary changes. There will be recommendations a year from now. What will those recommendations look like in their entirety? We don't know the answer yet, but we're going to take our time to be very diligent in the process. And again, looking at just the Lenexa City Center area, we have 1,400 units that are in the process of going in there, and that's impacting our enrollment. We're under a mandate from the city of Shawnee about Neiman, and so we know we have to move students. So we'll take our time in a comprehensive fashion to really look at what's best, and so we want to make sure we do it right. And so I do not anticipate any boundary changes for this next year. So we are looking carefully at out-of-district transfers, those students that do not live within the Shawnee Mission School District, and whether they should still transfer in, and especially these buildings where we don't have capacity, where we don't have available rooms to reduce pupil-teacher ratio. So that's something we're monitoring very carefully. So we have several buildings as we work through this process and try to finalize information where we will not accept new transfers. And if you move out of the attendance area, you will not be allowed to transfer back in. You'll be considered a new transfer. The goal is, if you're currently there, either as a transfer in or as a student, that we work to keep you there. But if you move out of the attendance area or you're out of the school district, certainly that puts us in a different position in some of these buildings, again, where we can't reduce pupil-teacher ratio because we simply do not have any space. So it is a great position to be in, saying, okay, we have space limitations, we have growing populations in areas. It's a great conversation instead of the other conversation. We're going to take our time, be very diligent, and work effectively to make the right decision. So don't anticipate any boundary changes. A year from now, or maybe a couple months less, it will be a different conversation. And so we'll spend a lot of time working on that process. Also tonight, I want to report to you on something that I'm going to ask John Douglas if he would present to us. Brock Winsecker is with us as well. Brock's an administrator at North, and these two gentlemen have been working on something which I think is very, very pertinent to what's going on in our society, and you hear a lot about this in our world today. And so if we can get the technology to work, we're going to talk about bullying at this point in time.
Mr. President, the board, I brought Brock for two reasons. Number one, Brock is he's certainly the magic behind the thought on this particular endeavor. He's done all of the background work, programming as much as it is, and doing all this other stuff. And the second reason I brought him is I always have technological failures, and so I figured that he most likely would do better at it than I am. Dr. Strike talked to you about some of the things that create educational gaps and performance gaps. And certainly education is a multifaceted endeavor that requires a lot of different things to work correctly. One of the things that is essential is the ability for the student to feel safe in their environment. Bullying is an issue that has been going on for a long time, obviously since all of us were in school, but there's been a real light shown on it here lately. And in light of the events that have happened in other school districts, it's certainly something that we have to pay a great deal of attention to. Now, in spite of that, we've been working on this project since the beginning of our school year and some of the other things, looking at our anti-bullying efforts. And multi-things are underway. Some curriculum changes, some staff and structural changes, some modifications in the way we deal with administrative issues. Those are things that are being worked on by our team, Dr. Hubbard, Dr. Ziegler, others. But the piece that we've been working on right now is the ability to accurately report and identify our actions when it comes to the area of bullying. Currently, we have a website, and you go to the district website, and then you go to a particular school, and then you hit the button, and then you make out a report for bullying. And it has been effective. It sends out an email to a bunch of different administrators, and somebody generally checks it down and goes forward. But we think it's time for the next generation iteration of that particular procedure. So what we have done, utilizing the technology that you gave us access to this year, we have created what I like to call an app, but the truth of the matter is a shortcut, which we will push out to every single student and administrator by the end of this week, hopefully, that will allow them to have on their desktop the ability to report without having to go through a variety of different steps to get there. And by pushing the app or the shortcut, it goes directly to the next screen, which is the ability to report a bullying incident. I'd also point out that currently the only reports we have of bullying, specific reports, come from an anonymous hotline. As far as I know, each administrator keeps track of reported incidents to them, but there's no district-wide effort to analyze that or look at that or being able to do the analytics. So what we have right now is a student will pull up, or an individual, even a parent, will pull up this particular format, and by the way, they can still get to it the old way if they wish to. And they'll identify what school it's at, which will help us send it to the right administrators without divulging a lot of information to other people who probably don't need that information. And they will give a description of what's transpiring. And here's where it changes. He's probably putting that about North, but because he's the associate principal at North. Once that goes in, it goes to the administrators, and then they will be required to make a follow-up report on what they find. And they will investigate these particular instances we're looking at. If in fact, and we get a lot of bullying reports which are just jokes and fooling around because it's anonymous. And then they can just write that off as not enough information to investigate or go forward. But they'll be able to put all that information in there, and then the administrator will report that back. And the different people in the administrative chain of command will be able to see what's taking place. Specifically, and if we could go to the report, Brock, that shows the length of time it's taking to investigate these, they will have at their disposal an immediate report which tells them how long it's taking for an administrator to follow up on this. In my former line of work, we used to say justice delayed is justice denied, and I think there's a lot to that. So if in fact we are postponing dealing with something for an inordinate amount of time, this will give us the opportunity to know that and see that and deal with that. And they can pull up the individual reports to see exactly specifically what has taken place. One of the other advantages to this is by doing it in a formalized setting. If we are called upon to justify an action or respond to allegations that we have not followed up, it is much better to go back and pull the documents that were created at the time as opposed to going back and creating reports and doing things in hindsight. For a lot of reasons, nonetheless, credibility. Once we have access to this information, we have another app or shortcut, and that gives us, as administrators, a dashboard that we can readily look at what is happening across the district. Now, don't take too much concern about this data. It's all test data. I think Brock put it in there to look really good and make some of the others look really bad. But in any event, we will have live data in there shortly, and we will all be able to determine what's happening. Is there any correlation? Are we finding that in some schools it's taking longer to follow these reports and consequently we have more bullying reports? Or how are we dealing with that? Knowing what we've got is much better than shooting in the dark. And that's the purpose of this entire program, is to be able to give us an analytical look by high schools, by middle schools, even by elementary schools, at what kind of bullying is taking place and how effective our responses have been. And then we can turn it over to the administrative team to be able to help those schools who have a problem work out creative methods and solutions which will help them deal with this. Well, the bottom line is what you already know. We take this situation extremely seriously. It's not a joke. And the kids who suffer through this are truly traumatized. And the people who do most of the bullying and suffer from it are generally our middle school kids, oftentimes our middle school girls, and they have the most fragile egos sometimes. So when you hear reports that people are considering suicide, or children are considering suicide, it's a real concern that we need to address and be sure we're on top of. So this is a priority. It's something that we've worked really hard on. I think Brock is deserving of a lot of congratulations for a job well done, and I'd answer any questions that you might have.
Great. Any questions for Mr. Douglas? It's wonderful. What a great app. What great information to have on hand there. Thank you too, Brock, very much for your efforts in this. Dr. Hinson, do you have anything further?
Just a few comments on what you just viewed. What a great process that they've created to really electronically monitor and assess what's taking place in the school district. And so it's a phenomenal tool that will assist us in the process. So Mr. Douglas Mr. Winseker, congratulations. Thank you very much. Did notice North High School looked really good on the data. And again, all that was just test data. There wasn't any validity to any of it at all. But we appreciate your work, and again, a very, very beneficial process and documentation for us. So thank you very much. That's all I have, Mrs. Zeeland.
Great, thank you, Dr. Jensen. We'll move on to open forum. And for those of you that don't know kind of the procedure of open forum, I will read you this. At the beginning of each regular business meeting, the Board of Education provides an open forum as an opportunity for public comment on school district issues. Agendas are published in advance to notify the community of the topics under consideration. Patron comments are welcome, but those wishing to speak to an issue not included in the agenda will not usually receive a response during the meeting. And we have 7 speakers in open forum tonight. Mrs. Goodburn is going to be my timer, and if you could, please limit your comments to about 4 minutes. She will be my timekeeper for you. And I know that some of you have a speaker, and there's a group of you. You're welcome to come up to the podium as a group then. But we'll try to remain within that 4-minute time frame if you can, please. Our first speaker tonight is Susan Ogg. And I do appreciate you all coming up as a group and not speaking to us each individually. That's great.
Good evening. We are here this evening to make a statement about the Briarwood Elementary Gymnasium. In January 2015, when district officials visited Briarwood Elementary as part of the bond issue campaign, they stated that part of the bond issue would pay for a rebuild of Briarwood Elementary. They were asked at that time if the Briarwood Gymnasium would be affected. As reported by the Prairie Village Post on January 13th, patrons were assured at that time that this bond issue project would not affect the gymnasium, which would remain on the site as is. In the last week, information has circulated among the community that there is a design proposal which includes demolition and replacement of the current gymnasium. As patrons of the Shawnee Mission School District, we would like to go on record tonight to state our concerns about this recent design proposal. First, following through on this proposal to replace the current gym with a new one would be a complete reversal of what voters were told during the bond campaign. We believe there must be accountability for assurances made as part of this or any bond issue campaign. Second, the current gymnasium was built 9 short years ago with funds approved by a previous bond issue. As patrons of the district and as supporters of that previous bond issue, we believe that replacement of the current 9-year-old fully functioning gymnasium at this time is not responsible stewardship, neither of those bond funds nor the facility built with those funds. Third, in order of significance, yet still profoundly important, is the history of this particular elementary gymnasium in the district. When a new gym was awarded to the school by a prior bond issue, the community rallied together to fund enhancements to this facility. The goal was to make this a community resource in terms of size and functionality that would otherwise not exist. Through the unprecedented generosity of countless of students, parents, businesses, and community members, private funds were gifted to the district which made this vision a reality. On behalf of everyone involved in that truly amazing piece of school history who had faith in the worthiness of that endeavor, we ask that this valuable resource entrusted to the district be managed using its full consideration and respect. In summary, a decision to replace the Briarwood Gymnasium at this point in the planning phase has far broader implications than the approximately $75,000 the community gifted the district to enhance this gymnasium 9 years ago. It raises the question to voters whether or not statements made regarding any aspect of a bond campaign and the subsequent projects it funds can be regarded as credible. It also raises questions regarding the use of bond issue funds, both previously and currently approved. Is responsible stewardship of previous bond funds being demonstrated? Will the projects being funded by the most recent $223 million bond issue be obsolete 9 short years from now? We will be meeting with district officials later this week, and we hope to find an acceptable resolution to this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Ogg. Thank you, group. Our next speaker is Jim Steiner.
Good evening. I am Jim Steiner. It's been my pleasure to follow 3 grandchildren through Briarwood Elementary. I've spent many hours there, and I'm fond of that school. I was pleased to learn that a new school would be built there. However, more recently, I was disappointed to learn that the gymnasium that was just funded and built 9 years ago would be raised along with the rest of the school. I would just echo the point that's already been made, that that does not seem to be an appropriate use of resources. In the state of Kansas, funding for education has been a raging debate now for years. Our legislatures seem to believe that school districts waste money and the only way to control it is to cut off the funds. I do not subscribe to that notion, but I would just like to point out that the situation that we're faced with here seems to provide fodder for their point of view. Let's don't give them the opportunity to believe that. I encourage you to rethink the plan to raise that gymnasium. Try to save it and incorporate it into the new school. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. Our next speaker is Susan Dunaway.
Who left their glasses?
Chief Dunaway.
All right. My name's Susan Dunaway. I want to address the one-to-one initiative. I kind of had a 3-minute talk and a 5-minute talk, so you said I had 4 minutes, so I'm taking the 5-minute one and I'm doing it really fast. Okay. Okay. I have 2 sons in the elementary school, and by trade I'm a clinical counselor and a neurotherapist. I work with children, families, and adolescents. I've done a lot of research on the effects of technology on the brain. If I had more space, I would bring the 6 books that I have back with me. And I've read a whole host of articles, and I have a bibliography of resources if there's anybody that wants to look at the research I've done. I'm not anti-technology, but there's a difference between using it and being dependent on it, and I'm not getting the feeling that the school district is taking the moderation approach that I would be the most comfortable with. So I'm going to highlight a few places where I believe technology is going to negatively impact our children if we overuse it, and I'm going to ask for some solutions. Emotionally and behaviorally, as screen time increases, the brain becomes overloaded. When that happens, the brain reacts the same to a screen as it does a hit of ecstasy or a line of cocaine. Then a tolerance starts to build up that starts numbing the pleasure center of the brain. That leads to a condition called anhedonia, which is a general loss of pleasure in everyday things. When we see this, we see increases in risky behavior. What that's going to look like in the classroom is even more kids who are acting out with anger issues, behavioral issues, attention-seeking behavior. In our older kids, more self-mutilation, drug use, and risky sexual behavior. These are huge safety issues. Educationally, what I think we're going to end up with are kids that have low critical thinking skills, who can't reason through complex problems, stay on topic, or effectively retain information. Because good, deep learning and understanding is fostered with focused attention. And while we know that the devices are cool, they're often highly distracting. And since it doesn't seem that either at this point you can or will block the distracting sites and the instant messaging that's going on, you can expect that distractions are going to increase, and shallow thinking is also going to increase, which is going to lead to a decrease in comprehension. This is going to affect test scores, and my concern is that instead of noticing that these problems might be linked to technology, that you're going to blame, which in my field means diagnose and or medicate the children or blame the teachers. Morally, as kids increase their screen time, there's a decrease in empathy, caring less about the people and problems around them. Online, their behavior is going to be increasingly rude and mean, and of course that leads to the cyberbullying that we were talking about. They found that the social processes in the brain that tell us to stop being rude in person don't even light up when we're behind a screen. It's a totally different process. So here's the things that I think that you can do to protect our kids and still have technology in their lives. Moderation is the key. Don't replace books and paper with electronic devices. Use the technology for the things that only the technology can do. There needs to be a policy at every level regarding the overall amount of screen time that a child can have in a school day, including homework, and I really recommend that that's no more than 2 hours. You need to educate your staff on the effects of technology on the brain, learning, emotional, social development. We as parents need to know how much screen time our kids are getting during the day so we can make appropriate parenting choices when they get home. We need to allow parents to allow us to remove the devices from their kids if we encounter problems that can't be solved otherwise, and give alternatives during that removal time. And if you can't do any of the moderation things, then I think that it is fair to allow those families that need to opt out. My final thought. There are a lot of Silicon Valley execs from Google, Twitter, eBay, et cetera, that send their children to tech-free schools. Alan Eagle, who's an exec at Google, says, I fundamentally reject the notion that you need technology aids in school. The idea that an app on an iPad can better teach my kids to read or do arithmetic is ridiculous. On asking if they would be behind if not exposed to the technology, he said, no, it's super easy. It's like using toothpaste. We make technology as brain dead, easy to use as possible. There's no reason why kids can't figure this out when they get older. So I'm not sure why we're in such a rush to immerse our children in the very technology that the guys who are making the technology make a concerted effort to keep their children away from. So
That's your
all.
4 minutes, Mrs. Dunaway.
Thank you.
Were you wrapping up there?
That was it.
You did it. Okay, thank you very much. Our next speaker is Liz Sears.
Hello, my name is Liz Sears, and I am suffering from the very same cold that Mr. Southwick is. I have 2 students in the Shawnee Mission District, one who's a freshman at South and one who's at Oak Park Carpenter, who will be going to Indian Woods Middle School next year. When I was asked in the district-wide survey, I wholeheartedly agreed that our children needed to be on the forefront of educational technology. If I knew then what I am experiencing now, I would have changed my selection. Technology is not evil. I love that when a question comes up with my kids, I have Google at my fingertips. There's a wealth of information we can explore, but we set limits in our home. I don't think that it's in the best interest of our children to have them on computers as much as they have been this last year. What we have experienced in the last year as a family has been a stressful mess. And I am not alone. I've talked to a lot of other parents who feel the same way I do. Anything that brings unnecessary distractions in their learning process is high on my radar. Of course, I'm concerned with access to pornography and other illegal issues, and I'm thankful that the district takes their responsibilities seriously in those areas. However, I am talking about the drug of clicking. Constant distraction. There are a number of simple distracting sites that they can go to during class and during homework time that break their concentration and impacts their learning. Sites like BuzzFeed, Messaging, YouTube, Songa, Crack, CBS Sports, and my favorite that I found on my son's computer is iwastesomuchtime.com. I see it as my parental responsibility to address the challenges that face my boys. I want to teach them to be responsible and set firm boundaries as they develop through their teenage years. I consulted with a friend of mine who's a Love and Logic facilitator, and she told me that during her training, she asked Dr. Charles Fay directly, how do we handle the internet? And he said the risks are too great to let our children feel the natural consequences from those poor decisions. The hardest part is that I can't take it away because for my high school student, there is no other option to study text, complete assignments, or turn in assignments. On the district website, it says that there's no opt-out policy for computers. I can't take away the computer. The parental controls on the computer are blocked. And I feel my rights to be a responsible parent are being blocked too. I appreciate the filters that the district does have in place through Blue Coat, but I need more. I want to teach my kids to manage their time and have professional discipline when it comes to technology. There are businesses in Kansas City that have more restrictions on the social networking and time-wasting sites than our kids do on these MacBooks. There are apps that can track their time for document editing, application use, and sites visited. My sons need that guidance so they can learn to use technology appropriately. I'm asking you, the Board of Education, to be aware of the problems and to help me as a concerned parent do what's best for my kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sears. Our next speaker is Joan Jensen. Jason Jensen, sorry. Took off my glasses.
My name's Jason Jansen. My wife and I have 5 kids in Shawnee Mission, and they're all just perfect, so I probably just won't relate to them. But back to the IT thing, I came and talked to you guys about 3 months ago. My background, I've been in IT about 20 years, doing large logistical rollouts for companies like Aflac, Colonial Life, Unum, things like that. One of the big, and the IT initiative is great. Like I said, use it where you can use it. I think it's a good place to go. But right now, you guys are playing faster and looser with kids than I do with adults on a daily basis. The instant messaging thing, which honestly you can turn off like that, you guys aren't turning it off. I don't understand why it's in there. I've heard some people discuss that it's so kids can, what's the modern word, facilitate communication. In my day and age, that was called passing notes during class. It's killing my kids, and I'm telling you. We have 3 kids right now, one that's gonna have to repeat a class next year, 2 that are gonna be in summer school this year. Because I'm telling you, for any parent in here, if you turn the volume up, it's gonna sound like a slot machine at Hollywood Casino. The group chat is all over the place, okay? The second issue is the App Store. Once again, you guys can turn that off with a click of a button. This is a corporate account. I don't know how many machines did we get, 20,000 or so? That's a corporate account. You guys should be able to totally turn off the App Store, turn off the messaging, and believe me, it's gonna alleviate so many problems. I'm lucky, I'm an IT guy. I turned off YouTube at my house. You would have thought I broke the internet. Kids were not on it at all anymore. It was awesome. But if you would have just addressed those 2 things, you're gonna see a lot of the same issues that these parents are facing go away. And like I said, these aren't my kids, they're perfect, but you gotta understand, you have kids that are Googling during tests. They're doing it. They're Googling during tests, they're messaging during tests. If you're not tracking the messaging, what they're doing is they're screenshotting during tests and sending answers back and forth because it's not locked down. You guys have done a fairly good job with the Blue Coat. Kids can get around that. All you do is go to Google and say, how to get around Blue Coat. It's not that hard. Even though we have our internal Wi-Fi, like in this building lockdown, because we let all of our kids have phones at school, they have 30 other Wi-Fi spots sitting in the room they can get on. So basically, we can take these machines and turn them into learning tools by disabling the messaging, disabling the use of the App Store. You're going to see them get frustrated at first because now they don't have a toy anymore. They actually have a learning tool. But I'm telling you, you can alleviate a ton of these problems very, very quickly. And as a corporate account, which this is, I promise you we can get the guidance to do it really quickly because I have these things locked down for adults, let alone my children. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Jensen. Our next speaker is Kristy Green.
I have a son going into middle school, and now I'm really afraid. But I do have faith. One thing I do have faith is that they're better at figuring it all out than we are, so he's my go-to tech guy. So anyway, yes, I am Kristy Green. I have 3 kids at Brookwood, a 2nd grader, a 5th grader, and a 6th grader. My 6th grader is in the EL program at Trailwood, and he's been in the EL program since 1st grade, first at Dorothy Moody, now at Trailwood. And recently we were getting him enrolled at Indian Woods in the SEEK program. And that's sort of what brought me here tonight, was enrolling in middle school and realizing that there were some changes coming our way. So I'm here tonight really on behalf of some other parents who are here regarding gifted programming. And just wanted to check in with you all about the status of gifted programming in the district. Concerned that some of the questions that we've had have not been able to be answered, specifically after we were trying to enroll in the SEEK program at middle school, and with the change from the 8-hour day to the 7-hour day, and the changes with SEEK. So one of the questions that has come up is, are there plans to take gifted out from under the special education funding? We've understood that there was a bill in the Kansas legislature to do that, and that didn't happen, but is that still an intention? We're wondering about that. One of the 2015 key legislative positions states, support changes in special education funding that are consistent for all Kansas students with regard to funding excess costs. I don't know if that has anything to do with what I'm talking about tonight, but maybe get clarification on that too. The bigger question, I think, is, are there changes coming that would change the service delivery model for gifted programming in the district? Are we moving from doing an EL center type model to a consulting model? And so far, when we've been asking around, we haven't been able to get answers to those questions. Since my son's been in the program, I think when he first started, there were about 21 people on staff. about 15 teachers and 6 paras. Now there are 9 teachers, and that's 6, 7 years later. And so I'm just wondering, is that the trend, and what's the intention? What's the strategy, or what's the vision for gifted programming in the district? Where are we headed with this? There's another parent here who's going to be bringing up some issues, but I think basically what we would love is an opportunity to talk with you and see where we go from here. So we hope to be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Green. Our last speaker tonight is Tiffany Johnson.
Hi, as was mentioned, my name is Tiffany Johnson. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. I have 2 children in the district, a 3rd grader and a 6th grader. My 6th grader, who is at Briarwood Elementary, is enrolled in the district's Enhanced Learning Program. He started at the end of his 4th grade, so we've been in it a couple of years. In the EL program, he has found a peer group, which has helped him to feel more comfortable socially. He has been challenged intellectually, which keeps him interested in learning and going to school. His EL day is by far his favorite day of the week. When asked, he feels like he has learned more at EL than he has learned anywhere else in the school, and I will acknowledge the 6th grader is not the best judge of what they're learning and where they're learning it. But the bottom line is we view his participation in the gifted program as critical to his engagement at school and his continued curiosity in learning new things. So we were dismayed by the changes that were made to the middle school curriculum next year, particularly as they relate to our ability to have our son enroll in both SEEK classes and the various elective options, including orchestra and a language, which are also year-long electives. My family and the other families who are here have questions regarding gifted education going forward. For example, will the district consider allowing flexibility in how students take required classes so that gifted students can participate in SEEK and other electives, especially the year-long electives? I would really like my child to have the opportunity to take art and music and language in middle school. An example of something that might the flexibility I'm talking about would be allowing students to take PE during the summer so that they would effectively open up another year-long elective slot so that they could fit in SEEK and the other electives. So from this point going forward, we're asking for increased communication and dialogue with the district. The changes for next year really threw a lot of us for a loop, particularly since they were announced after we had already decided how we wanted to position ourselves relative to electives for the year. Although we were instructed to talk to our principals and the gifted teachers, we found that they didn't always have the information that we needed in a timely fashion. We as stakeholders would like to be part of the process going forward. We're asking for a meeting with the district and the parents of children in the gifted program so that we can discuss the future of the program. We would like to be part of that future and have input into it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will move on to the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of March 30th.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Neighbor.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Denny. Is there any changes, corrections to the minutes? Okay, all those in favor of approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes of the special meeting of April 15.
Move approval.
Thank you, Mrs.
Second.
Bisfield. Thank you, Mrs. Goodburn. Any corrections or additions to the minutes? All those in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. Move on to the adoption of the agenda.
Move for the approval of the adoption of the agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Mack.
Second.
And Mrs. Levens. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. Move on to approval of routine business by consent. Is there any item that any board member would like removed from the consent agenda? Mrs. Neighbor?
Yes, I would move approval of routine business by consent.
Thank you. And thank you, Mrs. Goodburn. Any other Questions or comments? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. That moves us around to the action items. M, Administrative Services. Dr. Hinson.
What you have before you tonight, the 15-16 Administrative Guidelines and Procedures. As you know, we've had to update this in relation to all of our new school board policies. And so it's updated in relation to our new policies and procedures that are in place.
Okay. I would entertain a motion for the approval of the Administrative Guidelines and Procedures.
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Mrs. Levens. Thank you, Mrs. Neighbor. Any other discussion?
I might make a
Dr.
point
Denny?
here. The policy task force reviewed this document, and in so doing, a draft of the philosophy of education was sort of created. It's done so with the idea that this board can revisit that at any time, but it is published here in a way that makes it look like we've made a thoughtful and constructive decision on what that should be. I just want to point that out, that it's for everyone's consideration.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Denny.
I agree with Dr. Denny.
Thank you, Mrs. Mack. Is there any other discussion or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the Administrative Guidelines approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. Move on to letter N, Human Resources, Dr. Hinson.
A recommendation to you this evening is to approve up to 20 days of sick leave bank assistance. One of our teachers has requested assistance from our sick leave bank. I will make that recommendation to you this evening.
Is there a motion for approval?
I would move approval of N1.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Bisfield and Mrs. Neighbor. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. Move on to N2. Dr. Hinson.
Recommendation tonight to adopt the attached resolution. It's non-renewal of a professional employee's contract. That is a position that's eliminated in the school district. It is not related to performance issues.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Neighbor. Dr. Denny, thank you very much. Is there any other discussion or questions? Very good. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. Move on to Action Business Services, 01. Dr.
Something,
Hanson.
thank you, Mrs. Zeta. Something I've mentioned to you on several occasions. So we have our district fee schedule for 15-16. There are really two significant changes, and I'm going to make sure that we re-emphasize the asterisk. So one, the legislature, as you know, reconvenes on Wednesday this week. They have to fund the block grant proposal that they have passed. And so we certainly trust that occurs. And so that needs to occur for a lot of the initiatives that we're looking at is the funding of the block grant proposal. And certainly we're watching with great interest in what the court may or may not do. And then the timing of a potential decision is very significant for us. So on the fee schedule, really two asterisks. But as of right now, what I'm recommending to you, again, watching the legislature fund the block grant bill and also watching what the court may or may not do, the elimination of textbook fees at the elementary level, not the elimination of textbook fees at the middle school and high school, but only the elementary level. We will still collect this year slightly more in textbook funds than we will expend. And so the fund balance in our textbook fund will grow. And so that's why we can recommend the elimination of textbook funds for this coming school year at the elementary level. Also recommending to you that we eliminate the all-day kindergarten fee. And again, there's an asterisk there. So certainly things could change very significantly for us in the school district, depending on what happens in Topeka and the judicial system as well. But we would eliminate the all-day kindergarten fee. So that cost to us is approximately $1.8 million. There is a caveat. And so in estimating what this really means for our clerical staff, so we would not collect any fees at the elementary level. Okay, PTA and they can do their thing, but for us as a school district, no textbook fee at the elementary level, no kindergarten fee at the elementary level, so we would not be collecting fees from parents at the elementary level. I think our business office has really done a great job in estimating what does this save us in relation to time and money from our clerical staff. So our business office estimate is that this would save us about $225,000 a year just in clerical cost. Now, we are not going to eliminate that clerical cost, but hopefully it frees up our clerical staff at the elementary to spend time on other things. So we're not making a cut there, I want you to understand that, but it would take away the collection of any fees at the elementary level. Our clerical staff's not going to have to deal with can care. We're not going to go through collections. Approximately 28% of the fees that we assess in the school district go uncollected. And so that's another process for us. So recommendation on the fee schedule is the elimination of the all-day kindergarten fee, elimination of the textbook fee at the elementary level, asterisk caveat, legislature, judicial system, and certainly we'll monitor that with great interest to see what occurs. Most of the other fees are the same or very close to the same, no significant change at all. Questions?
Mrs. Neighbor?
I would like to give kudos to our administrators for being able to do this. I know for families that have multiple children in the district, that can be an expensive time in August. And while we can't do that with middle school and high school, this is certainly a step, I think, that hopefully will give some families relief. And then also the all-day kindergarten. I know we've tried looking at this for a number of years, and monetarily it's been a tough decision, but more and more of our students are going to daycare after kindergarten or having to pay for this, and that's also a stretch for a lot of young families. So thank you for being so efficient in other areas to allow this, and I'll keep my fingers crossed for the money to come in.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other comments?
I just a question,
Mrs.
just quickly
Whitburn?
about the food service meals. It looks like we're going up just a little, a nickel or dime here or there. I think I know the answer, but I just want to hear it.
I hate to even state this publicly, but we are required by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which runs the National Food Service Program, to set minimum prices for our meals. And so we're responding to the U.S. Department of Agriculture in relation to the minimum fee that we have to charge for our meals.
I thought that was the answer.
Don't ask me to defend that. These are the rules.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Mrs. Mack?
I would move approval of action item 01, the approval of the school fee schedule for the 2015-2016 school year.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Bisfield. Any other discussion? Great. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. Move on to action 02, resolution to sell general obligation bonds. Dr. Hinson.
So this is a happy occasion, so Mr. Dick Bartow, you can start coming to the podium tonight. Mr. Bartow represents George K. Baum and Company, is not a stranger to us, and he has some great information and proposal for us tonight. Thank you, Mr. Bartow.
Thank you, Dr. Hanson. Thank you, Madam President. Let me introduce some of our financing team that's here, and my voice gives out. Roger Edgar's going to take over. I was talking to Dr. Southwick on the phone, and he gave me his stuff, So. Also, we've got with us Gina Reekoff with Gilmore & Bell and Kevin Wemke from Gilmore & Bell. And first of all, we just want to offer our sincere congratulations and our tremendous congratulations to you on the successful passage of the $223 million general obligation bond issue. Speaks very well on behalf of the district. My congratulations to you. I know you all worked very hard, but it does send a distinct message that people are really excited about the Shawnee Mission School District and the things that you can do with this. As Dr. Southwick so eloquently mentioned, we are going to get very, very, very busy here. And one of the first things we have to do, Dr. Southwick and Bob Robinson have laid out a plan of action in order to get these buildings going and things. We need to sell some bonds. And what we have before you tonight is a resolution which would authorize us to proceed with that. and present the first sale of the bonds. At this particular time, we're very happy to tell you that we plan to sell about $111,500,000, half of the general obligation bond issue that was approved at the election. Rates are very, very good. We have a process here in the next 30 days in which to get this done. We have to go through a rating process and a whole bunch of steps to jump through, but we stand ready, willing, and able to try and to give it our best effort, and we do plan to be back here on May 27th to present those findings and those rates to you. Plan to close the issue sometime in the middle of June and have the money delivered to the district about June 17th at this particular time. Roger, Gina, will any of us be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding the issuance? We anticipate very, very, very great success and just continuing to build on the great success following the election. Any questions you might have regarding the resolution?
For Mr. Bartow? I guess not. Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I move adoption of the resolution.
Thank you, Dr. Denny. Thank you, Mrs. Bisfield. Any other discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. Move on to P, action by the superintendent. P1 is a proclamation. Mrs. Levens.
I move for acceptance of the proclamation National Teacher Day. Whereas teachers open children's minds to the magic of ideas, knowledge, and dreams. And whereas teachers keep American democracy alive by laying the foundation for good citizenship. And whereas teachers fill many roles as listeners, explorers, role models, motivators, and mentors. And whereas teachers continue to influence us long after our school days are only memories, be it therefore resolved that the Board of Education does hereby proclaim May 5th, 2015 as National Teacher Day in Shawnee Mission School District.
Second. Thank you, Mrs. Neighbor. Any other discussion or comments? Great. Well, we congratulate all of our teaching staff. They're very valued members of our community and our school district, of course. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. Move on to the policies of the second reading. Dr. Henson.
We have second reading of policies through item number 35 on your agenda tonight. So again, as I've stated to you several times, the Board Policy Task Force, you're spending a lot of time, which is very much appreciated, reviewing all of our policies and making recommendations to the entire body. So second reading of policies through item number 35.
Okay. Mrs. Bisfield.
I would move approval for policies or under action item P2 through 35.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Jenny. And thank you again, always, for the Policy Task Force work on these policies. Is there any other discussion or questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. Move on to the first reading items. Dr. Henson.
Thank you, Mrs. Zila. So it's the first reading of policies through numeral 92 on your agenda. Again, it's the first reading. They will come back to you at the next meeting for the second reading. And so if you have questions, certainly ask. The Board Policy Task Force will be happy to assist in that process as well. But it's the first reading, this set of policies.
Correct. Mrs. Neighbor.
I would move approval of P36.
No, not first reading.
Oh,
First reading.
First reading.
forgive me.
It's all right. That is all right. And
Next time.
Policy Task Force, I believe this is the first reading of the last section of policies. So at our May meeting, we will be finished with the review of our entire policy. It's not a manual anymore, but it's because it's all online. But okay, very good. We will address that next time for the second reading of those. Move on to action Q. Dr. Henson.
Thank you, Mrs. Zila. So we've had a lot of questions. When's the last work day for teachers? As you know, the last day of school is the Friday before Memorial Day, and we did not miss any inclement weather days, so we backed off those 4 days that were built into the calendar. And so my recommendation to you tonight, because we do contract with our teachers a certain number of days, however, it is the Friday before Memorial Day weekend. So my recommendation to you tonight is that teachers not be required to return to their classroom on the Tuesday following Memorial Day weekend. They may, if they so desire, return to work in their classroom on that Tuesday if they have duties they need to complete, but it'll be on a voluntary basis. We're not going to require that. They may end their contractual year a day early and finish on the Friday before Memorial Day weekend.
I move approval for the
Thank you.
final day. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I move
Thank you.
approval for the final day for teachers.
Okay, thank you, Mrs.
Second.
Mack. Thank you, Mrs. Goodburn. Is there any other discussion or comments?
I think just a question.
Dr. Denny?
I think what I hear you saying is that the contractual last day is the Tuesday. We're simply saying they don't have to appear that day if they don't wish to.
That is correct.
Any other comments or questions? Very good. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. We've established the final day for teachers. Move on to reports to the board. Dr. Hinson.
Wait a minute, you missed one. Do we have
What?
a report? Do we have a report? No, never mind.
He wants to
I'm unaware.
So
It's okay, you and I are.
And as you are aware, we mentioned the last day for teachers on that Friday, and as you're aware, that we will end the school year at Briarwood and Crestview on the Thursday instead of the Friday. And so working with our PTA groups and assisting teachers in getting those buildings packed up. And so they will be on Thursday, everybody else will be on Friday. And to your question, Mrs. Zila, on the board financial report, it's good, no concerns. I'd like to be saying that every month after July 1 as well, we'll see. And so, but uneventful, Mr. Knapp and myself were discussing it today, and so we're right on target and where we budgeted.
Very good. Move on to reports to the board, tobacco, drug, and alcohol agreement.
So tobacco, drug, and alcohol agreement, Matt Johnson, our district AD, is going to, again, describe to you the process. And so it's for informational purposes for you this evening. Thanks, Matt, for being here.
Good evening. And in keeping consistent, I too have scratchy throat.
Goodness.
I think Kenny passed it along the building somehow. So anyway, I do apologize for the voice. Last summer, I was asked to give a review of our current tobacco, drug, alcohol agreement that we had in place. It's something I think that has needed review for some time. It's a contract or an agreement we've had since, I want to say, 1997, somewhere in that neighborhood, and it had been pretty much the same paperwork that we'd given out to students for 15, 16, 17 years. And so as I looked at reviewing it, I decided that the best way to take a look at what our current paperwork was and what we needed to do, that I needed to gain input from stakeholders. And so over the course of this school year, I met with student athletes, coaches, athletic administrators, parents, principals, and we even had it reviewed by our legal counsel. This document that you guys have before you has gone through probably easily a dozen rewrites. I've definitely got lots of great feedback from many of you. And by no means is this the Matt Johnson tobacco, alcohol, and drug agreement, but it feels like it's a little bit of my baby after this, the last 12 months or so. But anyway, the new agreement that we have that we'll be putting in the activity packets focuses on an ability for the buildings to work with student athletes or students involved in activities when they have something occur, a mistake, that is not so detrimental where automatically their season ends or automatically they're out for a year. It gives an opportunity to still work with their teams, get help, and with a stair-step process where if those type of behaviors continue, obviously the consequences continue. And so you have before you what's going to be our new agreement, and at this time, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions? Dr. Denny?
I think it's appropriate. We are a school district. We have responsibilities for teaching and educating. I think this provides learning opportunities for students.
I agree.
Mrs. Bisfield?
I have a question, and I may just not have been reading quickly enough. I am thinking, all I'm seeing is it's prohibited on school property or at school activities. Is that correct?
Correct.
Not any other sites brought back because of things going on weekends or anything?
Well, no, it kind of is a 24/7 kind of anywhere, but there are lots of, I think, what-ifs on spring breaks and summer trips. We don't go out and readily police those. It's more about stuff within our own community, if that makes sense.
Okay, well, it definitely does state just at the event. You know, that was my only thought, was we maybe aren't clear enough that we, at least in the past,
Right.
have had some consequences.
Mhm.
Again, not necessarily spring break, but weekend things, and it had to do with the fact that you were
Right.
representing your school.
Right. I don't have our previous contract with us, but yeah, we can definitely look at that, absolutely.
Okay.
To make sure the language is appropriate for
Right,
that.
just that,
Mhm.
because I think this looks like it is just.
Well, it states on school property or at
or
school
at
activities.
So it pretty
Correct.
much limits.
Mr. Johnson, so as your multiple groups really have discussed this agreement, is there intent that it be only at school or school-sponsored activities, or that it truly be a 24/7?
It was to be a 24/7,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
And that might just be a simple oversight in the language in that
Yeah.
paragraph,
Okay.
which can be easily adjusted.
And this is for middle school and high school?
Middle school and high school.
And
I-
it's cumulative, so.
Yes.
It's signed every year, but walk us through that process
Right.
a little bit.
This was actually a very interesting input from the student advisory committee that I worked with. It was the students who shared with me that they wished that they could sign it every year, because signing it every year was a reminder to them, rather than signing it like their freshman year and then they didn't really think much of it, but that it remained cumulative through those 4 years. Now, when you're a middle school student, it's cumulative for those middle school years, but you get a fresh start when you go to high school, and then it starts over. But it's cumulative for those two different levels. But the kids were the ones that were on my committee, said, you know, I want to be reminded yearly, so signing it is just one of those conscious efforts that I make by reminding myself when I sign it that it's there. And we're adding a piece where we want the coaches to be the ones, because they take so much better direction from their coaches than they do just from, you know, the fact that the activity packet is online or whatever, but that their coaches are involved with communicating that signature through their team meetings and whatnot, and reminding them of that commitment they make to their team and to their behaviors and stuff like that. So we're trying to make it more of a, you know, the pressure is on because you've made a commitment to a team, you know? And so having to do that each year is why we thought, those students thought it was important, and I agreed with them. I thought, okay, well, let's do that. And when I took it to the principals, they were in agreement as well.
Mrs. Mack?
Yeah, first of all, I want to commend the administration for looking at this agreement, and I also appreciate board leadership for putting it on the agenda tonight. While it's not a board decision, I think this is a change in how we are viewing this. So I'm really thankful that we're having this conversation. The one thing that I would add, and I just noticed this, is that in the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph, it talks about possession, transfer, sale of any alcoholic or cereal malt beverage, restricted substances, or tobacco. And if I recall, we changed our policies to also include
E-cigarettes. And that was in an earlier draft, and I'm not sure why it
is
didn't
in
get in
there,
this
okay.
one. So we'll get that
Okay,
put in there as well.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other comments from the board members? Mr. Johnson, we appreciate all the revisions you've made, with a couple more comments to be added tonight for language possibly, or whatever, but.
A fine piece of work, as is never fully finished.
That's right, that's right. Boy,
Thank
you're
you
getting
for-
there, you're getting there.
That's right. Thank you for your time.
Very good, thank you so much. All right, that takes us to board comments. Any comments by board members? Mrs. Neighbor?
I have two. The first one, I'd like to thank the group on the computers bringing some of these things to our attention. I think Dr. Henson was very strong in his comments when he first spoke to the board on computers, that these were to be a tool in our bucket, but wasn't taking the place of our educational process. So it was, computers were meant to be a tool. And I think with how programming and all of the different applications are developing every day, this is something that I know we take very seriously and that we have to keep our eyes open for, and our kids are way ahead of us. I knew that a long time ago. Second of all, I would like to express my thanks to Terry Wintering, and I know the board. This last week, there was a special day for her position, and I don't think many of you may know that the superintendent's office used to have 3 secretaries, and we now have 1. And she is not only the executive assistant to the superintendent, but I believe Douglas and Dr. Southwick, and so we're...
And Bob Robinson as well.
Oh, gosh, Bob Robinson, okay, another fruit basket on the way.
And she puts up with 7 board
And
members.
clerk of the board, yes.
But she does a Herculean job with the transitioning that we have gone through this year with computers, serving as many people as she does, and always being around with a smile, and when we're late with our emails, gives us friendly reminders. So thank you, Mom, for looking after us. You are great.
I believe it was Administrative Professionals Day that you were
Yes.
looking at there. So thank you, Terry, really, for all that you do. Any other comments?
I've got one.
Dr. Denny?
We heard tonight from some folks in the Briarwood community about the desire to save the gymnasium. And then I think shortly thereafter, we approved under routine business for consent a contract with an architectural firm to do that design. And my understanding is that they will take a look at options which might include using the gymnasium. I do think that 9 years ago when that gymnasium was added, it was a piece that was added to an existing building and was designed in that manner. 9 years later, I don't know what the outcome of the architectural study will be, but I would hope that it's not unusually biased towards saving a gym at the expense of sound operation and useful site planning and development of a school that fits the 2015 programming for our students. So I'll be interested to see what the outcome is.
Thank you, Dr. Denny. Any other board comments? Okay, Mrs. Goodburn.
I move that the Board of Education recesses to executive session in order to discuss matters relating to employer-employee negotiations and to discuss matters relating to the acquisition of real property. The meeting will reconvene at
8:50.
8:50. No further business will be conducted following the executive session.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Dr. Denny. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. We shall return in 30 minutes.
Thank you. I could, but my barnyard